The feline shields of Pelusium. Imagine losing an entire kingdom because your enemy brought a bunch of cats to the battlefield. In 525 BC, the Persian Empire wanted to conquer Egypt. The Persian king, Cambyses II, knew the Egyptians practically worshipped cats, specifically the goddess Bastet. Harming a cat was a horrific crime, punishable by death. So Cambyses got creative in the most messed up way possible. He ordered his frontline soldiers to paint massive cats on their shields. Some legends even claim they physically strapped live cats and dogs to their armor, or threw them at the walls. The Egyptian archers were absolutely paralyzed. Terrified of committing divine sacrilege and angering their gods, they literally just refused to shoot. The Persians walked right in, slaughtered the defenders, and took the pharaoh hostage. Weaponizing an enemy's religion is ruthless, but sometimes the strongest armor on the battlefield isn't faith, it's romantic love. The sacred band of Thebes. For centuries, the Spartans were the terrifying apex predators of ancient Greece, unbeatable, unbreakable. Until 371 BC, when their invincible streak was permanently shattered by a unit of 150 couples in love. This was the sacred band of Thebes. Their commander realized a fundamental truth about human psychology. You might run away and abandon a stranger in the terrifying chaos of a battle, but you will fight like an absolute demon to protect your romantic partner. Plus, nobody wants the humiliation of looking like a coward in front of their lover. The strategy worked flawlessly. The sacred band fought with a ferocity the Spartans had never seen, completely annihilating the Spartan elite and ending their dominance over Greece forever. The empty city stratagem. Picture this. You're trapped in a tiny fortress. Your troops are gone, and 100,000 angry soldiers are marching right at you. You're dead, right? Not if you're ancient Chinese strategist Zhuge Liang. In 228 AD, facing absolute mathematical certainty of defeat, Zhuge Liang didn't panic. He ordered his few remaining men to hide, threw the city gates wide open, and sat up on the highest wall, calmly playing a lute. When the enemy general arrived, he was completely baffled. Knowing Zhuge Liang was famous for incredibly complex, deadly traps, the general assumed this peaceful scene was a massive bait. Sweating and terrified of walking into a slaughter, he ordered his massive army to turn around and run. He bluffed an entire army with a guitar solo. The land bridge of Tyre. When Alexander the Great showed up at the island city of Tyre in 332 BC and demanded they surrender, the locals literally laughed at him. They were half a mile off the coast, surrounded by deep water, and Alexander had no navy. They thought they were untouchable. So, what did Alexander do? He just rearranged the planet's geography. Refusing to take no for an answer, he ordered his men to build a literal land bridge through the Mediterranean Sea. For 7 grueling months, under constant sniper fire from Tyrian ships, his army dumped rocks and dirt into the ocean until they built a solid road straight to the island. Then, he rolled his massive siege towers right up to their walls and crushed them. He proved that an ocean is just a temporary inconvenience if your ego is big enough. The Battle of the Eclipse. Sometimes the universe just steps in and says, enough. In 585 BC, the Medes and the Lydians had been slaughtering each other for 6 brutal years. Neither side was winning. It was just an endless meat grinder. Then, right in the middle of a massive bloody clash, the sky suddenly went pitch black. A total solar eclipse. To us, it's cool science. To an ancient soldier waist-deep in mud, it was an apocalyptic warning. Both armies instantly dropped their weapons, absolutely terrified that the gods were furiously plunging the world into eternal darkness because of the war. The panic was so intense that the fighting stopped immediately. The two rival kings quickly negotiated a truce, married their kids to each other, and never fought again. The biological warfare of Caffa. In 1346, the Mongol Golden Horde was trying to conquer the walled city of Caffa, but they had a huge problem. Their own soldiers were dropping dead from the bubonic plague. Instead of retreating, the Mongol commander made a grotesque, historically devastating pivot. He ordered his men to load the rotting, plague-ridden corpses of their own soldiers onto catapults and launch them over the city walls. Mangled, infected bodies rained down on the streets, quickly spreading the disease to the terrified merchants inside. When those merchants finally fled on ships to escape the horror, they unknowingly carried infected rats right back to Italy. It was one of the earliest acts of biological warfare, and it directly sparked the Black Death in Europe. Archimedes' death ray. When the Roman Republic attacked Syracuse in 212 BC, they completely forgot to account for one guy, Archimedes. This legendary mathematician basically turned the city into a giant, deadly puzzle box. He built a massive crane with a heavy grappling hook. History calls it the Claw of Archimedes. When a Roman ship got too close to the wall, the crane would drop the hook, literally lift the wooden ship out of the water, and violently drop it, capsizing the crew. Even crazier? He allegedly built a death ray. Archimedes set up an array of highly polished bronze mirrors to catch the Mediterranean sun, focusing a blinding laser beam of heat directly onto the Roman sails, causing the ships to spontaneously burst into flames. The double walls of Alesia. Julius Caesar once trapped 80,000 Gallic rebels inside a hilltop city by building an 11-mile wall completely around them. Classic siege tactic, just starve them out. But then, Caesar got word that a relief force of 100,000 more angry Gauls was marching right at his back. He was trapped. Most generals would run. Caesar? He just ordered his men to build a second wall, 13 miles long, facing the other way. The Roman army was now sandwiched between two massive wooden walls of their own making. They fought off 100,000 guys on the outside, while continuing to starve out the 80,000 guys on the inside. It was a logistical masterpiece that broke the Gallic rebellion forever. The battle on the ice. Heavy plate armor is great for stopping swords. It's absolutely terrible for swimming. In 1242, elite Catholic crusaders marched into Russia, ready to conquer. Russian Prince Alexander Nevsky knew he couldn't beat them in a fair fight, so he lured the overconfident knights onto the frozen, slippery surface of Lake Peipus. The massive, heavily armored crusaders charged right into the Russian infantry. But as the brutal hand-to-hand combat dragged on, the sheer, localized weight of thousands of pounds of steel armor and massive war horses was too much. The ice started to groan. Then it cracked. Hundreds of the most elite crusaders in the world plunged straight into the freezing black water, dragged straight to the bottom by their own impenetrable armor. Jan Žižka's rolling fortresses? How does a completely blind general, leading a bunch of untrained peasants, defeat the most elite, heavily armored knights in Europe? He invents the tank. In the early 1400s, Jan Žižka was leading a rebel group in Bohemia. Knowing his farmers would get slaughtered in an open field, he reinforced standard wooden farm wagons with thick timber and iron armor. He chained them together to make mobile walls and packed his men inside with early firearms and crossbows. When the elite enemy cavalry charged, they just smashed harmlessly against the wagons and were immediately gunned down through tiny murder holes. A blind guy in a wagon managed to utterly humiliate the greatest armies of Europe for over a decade.